In the heart of New York, the gleaming neon sign of the Ed Sullivan Theater cut through the darkness of the night. On that cold Tuesday evening in October, while autumn leaves danced with the wind on the streets, inside the theater, under the warm studio lights, a completely different atmosphere prevailed. Stephen Colbert's The Late Show studio was bustling as usual. The technical crew was making final checks. Producers were receiving last-minute instructions through their headphones, and the studio audience was eagerly awaiting the night's guest. When Samuel L. Jackson's limousine pulled up to the studio's back entrance at midnight, paparazzi cameras began flashing. Despite being 75 years old, Jackson still maintained that characteristic energy and charisma as he stepped out of the limo, each step reflecting 40 years of Hollywood experience. In his dark gray, perfectly tailored Hugo Boss suit, shiny black Oxford shoes, and those famous purple glasses, he looked like a complete star. While his assistant never left his side, Jackson walked calmly toward the studio interior with the security team. During the 40 minutes he spent in the makeup room, Jackson was calm and focused as always. Sarah, the makeup artist, had been working with him for 10 years, repeating the same ritual before every show. "How are you feeling tonight, Samuel?" Sarah asked, gently touching the foundation sponge to his face. "I feel good," Jackson said in his characteristic deep voice. "I'm excited to talk about the new film. It's a project people are really going to love." Jackson's new film, Echoes of Justice, was set to hit theaters in 3 months. His role in the film was playing an aging federal agent, and this character had the potential to be one of the most important roles in Jackson's career, both with action scenes and emotional depth. During the 6 months of filming, Jackson had completely focused on his character, training 3 hours a day for physical preparation and consulting psychology experts for character development. After makeup was completed, a producer's assistant took Jackson to the green room. During the 15 minutes he spent there, Jackson didn't look at his phone or check social media. Instead, as always, he sat quietly and gathered his thoughts. This was a ritual he had maintained for years, centering himself before every important event, focusing and being completely ready for that moment. In the studio, Stephen Colbert was making his final preparations. The 59-year-old comedian and talk show host had been hosting The Late Show for 9 years, interviewing hundreds of celebrities during this time. But tonight was different. His producers had asked him to ask bolder questions in the Jackson interview, suggesting he create more talked-about moments to increase ratings. "Stephen, don't forget Jackson's statements in last month's Variety interview," said head producer Marcus, leaning into Colbert's ear. "What he said about young actors. This topic could go viral." Colbert nodded, but there was a slight uneasiness inside him. Samuel L. Jackson wasn't just an actor. He was an institution, one of Hollywood's most respected names. But TV business was like this. Ratings meant money. 5 minutes before the show started, Jackson was brought to the studio. Under the massive studio lights, the 200-person audience immediately stood up when they saw him. Applause reached the ceiling. Jackson waved, smiled, and walked toward the guest chair. Confidence radiated from every step. The self-assured posture that 40 years of experience gave him dominated his entire body. He shook hands with Colbert and exchanged a few words. When Jackson sat down, the studio audience was still applauding. This was a normal reaction. Samuel L. Jackson's presence alone was impressive. "Ladies and gentlemen, live before you," Colbert shouted, spreading his arms. The legendary voice of Hollywood, Samuel L. Jackson. The applause rose again. Jackson humbly bowed his head and placed his hand on his heart. This was a sign of the respect he always showed to his fans. "Samuel, it's wonderful to have you here," Colbert said, leaning on his desk. "Every time I see you, that incredible energy of yours impresses me. You're 75 years old, but you move like you're 35. "Thank you, Stephen," Jackson said, with that familiar warmth and closeness in his voice. "I'm really happy to be here. I always enjoy watching your show." The first 10 minutes went perfectly. Colbert talked about the turning points in Jackson's career. From Pulp Fiction to Snakes on a Plane, from the Avengers series to Django Unchained, they reviewed Jackson's filmography. Jackson gave thoughtful answers to every question, shared set anecdotes, and talked about his experiences with Quentin Tarantino and Samuel. "Working with Quentin is always special," Jackson said, with the sparkle of those memories he was telling in his eyes. "He's not just a director, he's also a film historian. When shooting every scene, he thinks about both the emotion of that moment and its place in cinema history. The studio audience listened in fascination. When Jackson spoke, it wasn't just words flowing from his mouth, but years of experience. Every anecdote, every detail was a special glimpse into Hollywood's inner world. But then, in the 14th minute, things began to change. Colbert leaned forward slightly. His tone changed. Samuel, now I want to move to a more current topic. Some of the views you've shared on social media and in interviews recently have become a subject of discussion. Jackson's body language immediately changed. He settled back in his chair and positioned his hands on his knees. This was a sign that he was shifting to defensive mode. As someone who had given television interviews for years, Jackson knew these kinds of question transitions very well. "Which views of mine are you talking about, Stephen?" he asked, his voice still calm but now more careful. "Well," Colbert said, looking at the cards in his hand, "in your interview with Variety magazine last month, you made some criticisms about the work ethic of young generation actors, especially—" "Wait a minute," Jackson said, raising his hand slightly. "Did you actually read that interview?" "Because I didn't criticize anyone there." Jackson's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "What did you read?" Colbert looked at his cards again. "Well, you clearly said—" "No," Jackson cut him off, his voice still controlled but now sharper. "I clearly said nothing. What exactly did you read right now?" This was the moment when the atmosphere in the studio completely changed. Jackson's tone hadn't changed. He wasn't shouting. He didn't look angry. But there, in the way he sat in that chair, in his looks, something was different. 40 years of Hollywood experience was kicking in. "Insulting?" Jackson repeated, his voice low but clear. "Stephen, did you really read that interview?" Colbert backed away a little but continued. "Yes, of course I read it." "And you clearly—" "No." Jackson cut him off. There was no harshness in his voice, but there was power. "You didn't read that interview?" "Because I never insulted anyone there. I talked about the value of experience, the importance of patience, respecting the profession." A moment of confusion appeared on Colbert's face. "But the general meaning—" "General meaning." Jackson's voice began to rise, but in a controlled way. "Stephen, are you trying to judge me here based on general meaning?" The cameras in the studio focused on Jackson's face. At that moment, viewers understood why this man had survived in Hollywood for 40 years. There was no anger in his eyes, but disappointment. But more importantly, there was a cold intelligence that completely analyzed and evaluated the person in front of him. "I came here to talk about my new film," Jackson said. The control in his voice was impressive. "Not to discuss misinterpretations of things I said in the past." Colbert, probably with instructions from his producers, tried to continue. But Samuel, as a public figure— "Stop," Jackson said. One word, but he said that word in such a tone that everyone in the studio froze. "Stop right there, Stephen." He stood up. Slowly, decisively. Jackson, already tall at 6'2", looked like a giant in the studio when he stood up. Colbert was looking at him from where he sat, not knowing what to do. "I've been doing this job for 40 years, Jackson said, his voice now filling the entire studio. 40 years, Stephen. How old are you? 60? So when you were born, I was already acting on stages." Colbert tried to open his mouth, but Jackson continued. "In these 40 years, Jackson's voice was getting stronger. "I've acted in more than 150 films. I worked with Martin Scorsese. I worked with Quentin Tarantino. I worked with Spike Lee. I worked with Steven Spielberg. Do these names mean anything to you, Stephen?" The studio audience held their breath. No one expected such a development. "While working with these directors," Jackson said, "I worked with actors of all ages, all ethnic backgrounds, all experience levels. And during this time, I never, ever insulted anyone, because this profession is built on respect." The power in his voice was increasing, but he wasn't shouting. This was more dangerous. This was controlled anger. "Are you trying to confront me here with a story you made up in your head? Are you questioning my character?" The producers in the studio had panicked. The cameras were still rolling, but no one dared to intervene. This was Samuel L. Jackson, not someone to be dismissed. "Samuel, please sit down. Let's talk," Colbert pleaded. "Let's talk?" Jackson let out a bitter laugh. "Stephen, you don't want to talk. You want drama. You want a viral moment. You want your ratings to come out of my back." He leaned forward, looked toward Colbert. That look was the cold, calculating look he gave to the bad guys in his movies. "But you know what? I'm not going to play your game. I worked with real professionals on Quentin Tarantino's sets, under Martin Scorsese's direction. What are you doing? Sitting there trying to trap people? Colbert's face began to turn red. Samuel, You just what? Are you playing journalist? Are you a reporter, Stephen? Or are you a showman? Because they're not the same thing. Jackson approached the desk. He stopped right in front of Colbert's desk. Do you know who I worked with? I worked with Morgan Freeman. I worked with Denzel Washington. I worked with Robert De Niro. These men respect me because I earned that respect. I earned it with 40 years of sweat, tears, and hard work. He raised his voice a little more. When you sit here and question my character, you're not just insulting me, you're also insulting this profession. This profession is not your entertainment, Stephen. This is our life. The studio audience was in complete silence. None of them knew how to react. This wasn't a normal interview anymore. This had become a character lesson. And now, Jackson said, lowering his voice a little, I'm going to tell you something, Stephen. And listen to this very carefully. He leaned toward Colbert. His face was serious, his eyes were ice cold. You invited me here. I took time out of my own schedule and came. I came to your show, to your studio, in front of your audience. And how did you meet this respect? By trying to corner me. He straightened up. His hands were in his pants pockets. This isn't new for me, Stephen. I've experienced things like this before. But the difference is, I'm 75 years old now. I don't have time anymore to deal with anyone's nonsense. Colbert made one last effort. Samuel, please, there's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Jackson's eyebrows rose. Stephen, there's nothing misunderstood here. You deliberately, intentionally tried to put me in a difficult situation, and I won't allow that. He turned and started walking toward the studio exit, but after a few steps he stopped and turned around. You know, Stephen, you're really a special man, he said. There was subtle mockery in his voice. You have Samuel L. Jackson in front of you. 40-year career, hundreds of films, millions of fans worldwide. And what are you doing? Trying to create drama. He shook his head. This isn't my problem. This is your problem. Because I'm going to walk out of here, and tomorrow morning I'll still be Samuel L. Jackson. But you? Will you be the same Stephen Colbert you were yesterday? Or did millions of people watching this see your true face? He looked at Colbert one last time. 40 years in this business, Stephen. 40 years. And I'm still here because I'm a professional. I thought you were too. I was wrong. And he left. Just like that, he left. The door closed behind him, and Samuel L. Jackson was gone. There was dead silence in the studio. Colbert sat frozen in place. The cameras were still rolling, but no one knew what to do. Finally, Colbert tried to recover. Well, I guess let's go to a commercial break. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. When the video from that night hit the internet, it became a complete phenomenon. It got 2 million views in just the first hour, 5 million in the second hour. It passed 10 million before midnight. On Twitter, the hashtag #JockerRespectSamuelJackson became a worldwide trending topic. Comments were pouring in. Legend behavior. Samuel L. Jackson just schooled everyone on respect. Colbert messed with the wrong man. 40 years in Hollywood doesn't lie. This is how you handle disrespect. Samuel L. Jackson is a class act. I've never seen anyone destroy a host this elegantly. Pure professionalism. Samuel L. Jackson literally gave a masterclass on dignity and self-respect. When the video was uploaded to YouTube, the like ratio was 97%. The comment section was completely on Jackson's side. This man taught how to be respected. 40 years of experience spoke. Colbert made a big mistake. Jackson is a legend. The man finished Colbert without cursing or shouting. What kind of charisma is this? On Instagram, celebrities began supporting Jackson. Denzel Washington shared a post. Respect is earned, not given. My brother Samuel showed the world how it's done. 40 years of excellence speaks for itself. Under the post, thousands of likes and comments, two legends supporting each other. This is why Denzel and Samuel are the GOATs. Real recognize real. Morgan Freeman also broke his silence. 40 years in this business teaches you when to stand up and when to walk away. Samuel chose the right moment for both. Proud of you, my friend. Robert Downey Jr. wrote on Twitter, class act. That's what real leadership looks like. When you know your worth, you don't accept less. Samuel Jackson just reminded everyone why he's a legend. Scarlett Johansson shared on her Instagram story, I've worked with Samuel in multiple Marvel movies. He's exactly the professional and gentleman he showed tonight. Respect and integrity in action. Chris Evans. Having worked with Samuel for years in the MCU, I can say he's exactly who he showed himself to be tonight. A man of principle who demands the respect he's earned. Mark Ruffalo. Class, dignity, and strength. Samuel L. Jackson just gave us all a lesson in how to handle disrespect with grace, but firmness. But support was coming not only from Hollywood, but from all over the world. Even young actors supported Jackson. Tom Holland, legend behavior. This is how you handle disrespect. And Samuel Jackson just showed us all what integrity looks like. Zendaya. Samuel L. Jackson just gave us all a masterclass in dignity. When you know your worth, you don't let anyone diminish it. Respect. Michael B. Jordan confirmed the mentorship story Jackson mentioned. This man changed my career and my life. Everything he said tonight about supporting young actors is true. He's been my mentor for over a decade. Thank you for always having our backs. Samuel L. Jackson, Anthony Mackie. Samuel L. Jackson saw something in me when nobody else did. He opened doors for me that I couldn't open myself. Everything he said tonight about supporting the next generation is 100% true. He lives it every day. Regina King. When I decided to transition to directing, Samuel was one of the first people to support me. He's exactly the man he showed himself to be tonight. Integrity, class, and unwavering support for this industry. Short videos shared on social media went viral. The part where Jackson said, 40 years, Stephen, 40 years. His question, do you know who I worked with? And of course that final I was wrong exit were shared millions of times. Memes started being made. Jackson's cold look was combined with the word respect. The moment he stood up went viral with the text, when you've had enough. On TikTok, young users were editing Jackson's words to make motivational videos. His question, do you know who I worked with? Was combined with photos of successful people. On Facebook, baby boomers were praising Jackson's attitude. That's how it's done. That's how you demand respect. On LinkedIn, people from the business world were sharing Jackson's behavior as an example of setting professional boundaries. But the most impressive thing was that Jackson hadn't cursed at all. He hadn't hurled any insults, hadn't made any personal attacks. He had just told the truth, defended himself, and shown no tolerance for disrespect. Experts in celebrity news were analyzing Jackson's behavior. This is an example of how to take a gentlemanly but firm stance. Jackson showed he wasn't in a powerless position. 40 years of experience. Speaks like this. This is an example of real self-respect. The next morning, major news channels made the incident headline, CNN. Samuel L. Jackson walks off Colbert after heated exchange. Fox News, Hollywood Legend School's talk show, host on Respect, NBC. Samuel L. Jackson's powerful exit goes viral, BBC. U.S. actor's dignified response to TV ambush. Praised worldwide talk show experts were discussing the topic. Colbert made a big mistake. Cornering a guest like this isn't professionalism. Jackson's reaction was completely justified. The man was subjected to disrespect. This should be a lesson for talk show hosts. Guests aren't sensation material. An analysis article was published in The Hollywood Reporter. Samuel L. Jackson's late show exit showed the importance of boundaries in celebrity interviews. Treating an actor with a 40-year career like this is unacceptable. Another article in Variety. Jackson's attitude was also a response to prejudices against older actors in Hollywood. Having that character, that power, even at 75, isn't easy. Rolling Stone. Samuel L. Jackson's lesson to Colbert was a teaching on how to demand respect. But what was really important was the impact this incident had on young actors in Hollywood. Jackson's words were really like a mentor. Young actors were making posts on Twitter. Samuel L. Jackson taught us how to gain respectability. A 40-year career is defended like this. This man is a real role model. Some young actors had even written Jackson's words from that night. This profession requires commitment in their bios. Acting coaches were taking Jackson's behavior as an example. What I always tell my students, earn respect, but never tolerate disrespect. Jackson exemplified this perfectly. Jackson's exit began to be studied as a case study in drama schools. On the second evening, Colbert was forced to address the topic on his own show. Last night, our interview with Samuel L. Jackson ended unexpectedly. As a talk show host, asking questions is my job. But maybe my approach was wrong. I should have shown more respect to an actor with 40 years of experience like Samuel L. Jackson, but it was too late. The internet had already made its decision. The hashtag Colbert apology was trending, but this time for criticism. Too little, too late.
Damage is done, Stephen.
Samuel deserved better. This apology doesn't change what we saw. Jackson, meanwhile, said nothing. He didn't tweet, didn't share any Instagram posts. The next day, he just continued with his normal schedule. He went to the gym, attended the film's post-production meeting, had dinner with friends. This silence was a sign of how professional he was. He didn't prolong the drama, didn't create controversy. He had done his job, left, and continued with his life. On the third day, major newspapers published editorial articles. The New York Times, the Samuel L. Jackson incident, when celebrity interviews go wrong. The Washington Post, respect in the age of social media, lessons from Hollywood. The Guardian, why Samuel L. Jackson's late show exit matters. Los Angeles Times, Hollywood's elder statesman shows how it's done. The common point of these editorials was this: Jackson was right, and he should have acted like this. A week later, The Hollywood Reporter did an exclusive interview with Jackson. They only asked 3 questions. What did you feel that night? When did you decide to leave? What advice do you give to young actors? Jackson's answers, with his usual calmness: I felt disappointed. In my 40-year career, I had never encountered such a situation. I decided to leave the moment he said general meaning to me. At that moment, I realized I wasn't being taken seriously. My advice to young actors is this: earn respect, but never tolerate disrespect. This profession is difficult, but it's not worth losing your dignity. This interview also went viral. Jackson's calm, mature approach gained even more appreciation. A month later, Samuel L. Jackson appeared on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Fallon was very careful, only talked about the film, didn't ask personal questions. Jackson seemed relaxed and happy. Samuel, it's wonderful to see you here, Fallon said. We're excited to talk about your new film. Thanks, Jimmy. I really wanted to come here. You're always a great host. Even this simple exchange trended on Twitter. See how it's done, Colbert. When Jackson's film Echoes of Justice was released, it was very successful at the box office. Critics praised Jackson's performance. Even at 75, Jackson's charisma burns up the screen. This man proved once again why he's a legend. Jackson's best performance in recent years. Oscar buzz started. Jackson's performance began to be nominated in the Best Supporting Actor category. Jackson's speeches during award season also drew attention. In every speech, among the names he thanked, he emphasized, "My mentors who taught me this profession." When he took the stage at the Golden Globes, he received a standing ovation. In his speech, this profession is built on respect. Learning to show respect is as important as expecting to be respected. I dedicate this night to all my mentors and everyone dedicated to this profession. The applause lasted for minutes. Colbert, after that incident, never mentioned Jackson again. His producers also started being more careful. More research was being done in celebrity interviews. Gotcha questions were being avoided. Jackson's behavior that night had affected not only his own career but the entire talk show industry. Now everyone knew, you have to show respect to your guests. And Samuel L. Jackson? He was, as always, himself. Respectable, professional, with character. He had added another page to his 40-year career. But this time, not just with acting, but with his character. That night, millions of people had learned something from Samuel L. Jackson: how to earn respect, how to react to disrespect, and most importantly, how to protect your character. That's why he was Samuel L. Jackson. That's why he was a legend. And that's why he had given a performance that went down in TV history that night. Because real power lies not in shouting, but in being calm. Real character is shown not in attacking, but in defending. And real respectability emerges when it's demanded. Samuel L. Jackson had done all of these that night. And the world had watched.